with the Kansas City Chiefs. And you got to remember last year, it got kind of ugly a little bit at times. He was coming off of his cancer diagnosis. He had beaten that. He had worked his way back, and then the Chiefs wanted to insert some kind of insurance clause there where they wanted Berry to pay for it. They eventually did back off of that demand there, but then Berry was holding out into training camp. So it got a little ugly there, and then Berry made it clear now that he doesn't want to play on the franchise tag again. So this is really going to be an interesting one because the Chiefs want to make sure that they can get him done on a long-term deal, keep him happy, and get it done if you don't have to use the tag. But right now I don't sense any forward momentum on a deal, so that's where this one could wind up being headed.
And, Mike, we've been talking about the Giants a little bit the last couple of days with the release of Victor Cruz and Rashad Jennings. But with JPP, an impending free agent here, is the franchise tag a likely designation for him?
I wouldn't say likely. It's just because the number is so high, and it's $17 million. It's going to be in that area. Now, that number is so high in large part because the Giants gave Olivier Vernon $17 million a year. So the Giants really only have themselves to blame for that. When they had to make that move, it was a good move to bring in Olivier Vernon. But now they're dealing with the back end of that, which is the Jason Pierre-Paul number. So I do believe that they are going to try to really get this thing done with Pierre-Paul in the next couple of weeks and hopefully avoid the tag situation. But the disparity between where that tag is and where the top of the defensive end market is versus where the Giants are going to want to get this thing done. You're talking about $17 million down to, let's say, about $12 million, somewhere in that range, with some teams saying that Pierre-Paul could be worth $13, $14 million per year. There's a big spread there. So if I'm Pierre-Paul and I'm Pierre-Paul's agent, and I do believe this will be the case, I think they'll play a little game of chicken here and say, you know what, in the long run, you want to tag us? Go ahead and tag us. We'll take that $17 million number as a starting point for negotiations. They don't want to play on that deal,
right,
but use it as a starting point.
Yeah, that defensive end number really high. So is that wide receiver number. Is that something that the Cleveland Browns might be willing to deal with Terrell Pryor, an impending free agent?
Yeah, I believe that they're going to, just because of how Terrell Pryor has blossomed here. And we talked a little bit about him yesterday. And the way that I phrased it was, I had talked to defensive players going up against him, and they said he's not just, squatting in zones, making plays, making catches just by finding open spots. He is making plays. He is being double covered. He is singled up one-on-one. It looks like he's not open. They're throwing the ball up to him and saying, hey, Terrell, go make a play. And he's making a play. This is a franchise-type guy, and it's just really fascinating considering all the teams that could have had this guy when he was out there trying to make the transition from quarterback to receiver. He finally makes it. He had a spectacular year, and right now he's got the leverage on his side. So kind of like Pierre-Paul, play that little game of chicken and say, you know what, if you want to keep me, you're going to have to keep me on that franchise tag, which is going to be up north of, what, $15 million this year,
Sure.
I believe?
Yeah, and in Pittsburgh, Le'Veon Bell's a guy who would garner franchise tag consideration in any scenario, but some of the other factors that he's been dealing with, whether it be the injuries or suspensions, make that an even more likely designation this year for him?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to make this whole thing very difficult for the sides to come to an agreement here, because they have to figure out, the Steelers have to have that bit of a leap of faith. Now remember, if there is another suspension, let's say hypothetically he signs a deal and there's another suspension, they can include language in there that would void the guarantees for his deal going forward. So there is a little bit of protection as far as that is concerned, but they want to make sure that this guy is going to be available, he's going to be able to play, and he's going to be a guy that he brings that element that a lot of defensive coaches say nobody else brings. He's got a style that's unique. They don't see anybody that's like him. They haven't seen anybody that's like him really for much of the NFL history that you see running backs, and the way he's got that patience there. So that is a franchise-type player, just like I said with Terrell Pryor, a guy that can bring something that nobody else can. So that's why this is going to head toward